Okay, we're reading Dorothy Dunnett's Queen's Play up to part 4 now, and we're reading the first 2 chapters, and I loved them a lot. So we're back in Dieppe now. Prince of Barrow Oliamo is back, and there is a woman he doesn't intend to see, so I'm assuming Una. A hypocrite he meant to see chastened, I'm assuming Lymond, and an autocratic courtier he wished to chastise, which I assume is Dabinia. Oliamo's thinking about all this, and they're on the ship, and Lymond's just up on the deck singing. Just singing. And Oliam's is just like, does he know what's in store for him? Lymond is so externally unconcerned a lot of the time. It must drive people mad. So Oliamo is keen for a fine ripping of masks and shredding of tinsel. The embarrassed rage of his lords and lovers would rise to him in his safe place and tarnish every shallow spur of pseudo-gold. He's referring to Lymond. I mean, Lymond isn't pseudo-gold. He does actually have golden hair, Oliamo, just like you. And then as soon as they get to Dieppe, Lymond is like, Lymond is straight to work, essentially. So Lymond is now the Lymond from Game of Kings, like, finally. Like, we didn't have this the whole book. He seemed much more idle and just sort of doing whatever. But now Lymond is straight into it. We get a little bit of a background into his network with Martine, or La Belle Vue. And that's good. We didn't really get much of how he got a lot of information, and we assumed that he would have had information from places, but to finally get that on paper is good. This is on page 292. I love it how Lymond comes in to see Martine, and she's like, "Do I know you?" And then he moves really quickly to do something. And then he says, "Oh, now you must remember me, the travelling gentleman." And she does. She remembers him after that. Remembers him after what? What movement did he do? I initially thought maybe he moved so quickly, like moved past her to get into the door or something. But I think he's wrapped his arms around her and done something very romantic or something like that in a very like swift way, and she's remembered that because Taddy Boy did that. No, because it says here she had forgotten how quickly he moved. What did he do? Did you guys read that the same as me? I was like, oh man, like, did he, I don't know, like move her hair behind her ear or something? And she says, "Well, Dionysus, you are yourself again." So we get Lymond compared to Dionysus again. We also, like, now that we know that he moves quickly, it's clear that Lymond is actually a lot better. He's getting better and better as we keep reading each chapter. There's no mention of a limp or a walking stick at all here. So that's good. And his hair would be totally grown out in gold, so that's lovely. I love the line where we're probably in Martine's POV, and she's trying to get information out of Lymond, and it just says here, "He was uninformative." And I'm like, yeah, that's not new. That's just how Lymond is. He will be very uninformative despite saying many words, and sometimes he'll say very few words and be extremely informative. So Martine basically admits that she has found out some information about who was behind the incident with the boat when Lymond was coming in, and that was financed by Antonius Beck. And it's quite telling here. She says, "I went to him," said, and in Lymond's POV we get, "He would not and did not think it necessary to comment on the magnitude of the service." So basically, like, Martine went to him, probably offered her body or something like that, but Lymond has chosen not to comment or think it necessary to comment on the magnitude of the service. Is that out of respect to her, or just because they have an understanding. Have I interpreted that correctly? That's how I've interpreted that. He doesn't seem to need to think it's super necessary to comment on how far these women are going because they understand that he's going to pay them. He must be paying them, I assume, like actual gold for all of this. So then Frances starts laughing as she's explaining that about Matthias, the captain of the Golden Rue, and Antonius Beck. I don't know why he's laughing. Can anyone please explain that? And then she says, "You are hell's own Apollo." Once again, we get Lymond compared to the devils or hells, and basically, and then Lymond says, "No, I'm Quetzalcoatl." It's cute. And then setting himself lightly to please her. Where is he setting himself lightly? What am I reading? What are they doing together, everyone? Are they lying down together? I'm so confused. I'm reading way too much into this. They're probably just sitting down, having a cup of tea, but I don't know. He would explain nothing else. Yeah, he doesn't give up any information where he doesn't need to. Lymond is really untrusting in that way. So we say that he sent her a little barrel plated with gold and a string of 12-carat pearls in it, from which she guessed he had discovered the warehouses of Antonius Beck. That's really funny. Lymond's so happy. He's like, I'm gonna go and get all of this treasure and send some back. That is hilarious. I absolutely love that. And then, so Lymond looks into the Antonius Beck stuff. I'm assuming he's got some information from Antonius Beck, hopefully information that implicates Dabinia as guilty. He's a happy boy. He's a happy boy when he's doing this sort of stuff. I don't understand why he didn't just do this all in the first place. Sure, because he didn't know Dabinia was the problem. But goodness gracious. Couldn't he have gotten to work a bit harder? Then Lymond goes to Hotel Harrison, which is where Michael Harrison is, or Michelle Harrison, and walks in. Michelle doesn't recognize him. Obviously has news that his brother Bryce is dead. And then Lymond initially knocks and the person is like, wait a minute, I will get my master. And then Lymond's just like, waits for the person to go and then just walks in the door anyway. Oh my gosh. And then he's recognized as Taddy Boy, and Michelle Harrison is super happy because unconstitutional activity was Harrison's life force. And so Harrison really likes the idea that Lymond is undercover. So Michelle Harrison is now knows everything, that Robin Stewart is guilty and that Robin Stewart was the one that killed his brother. And then that's really fascinating because they were making fun of Robert Stewart this whole time and Michelle was in on that, so I wonder how much Michelle now regrets kind of making fun of Robin Stewart, but also probably doesn't because it's not like that actually changed Robin, but it's just interesting that that Robin was the joke of them, right? So yeah, anyway, they have a chat and Lymond explains about his plot to bring down Dabinia to Michelle Harrison, and then Harrison is like really kind of pissed off at Dabinia, and it says here on 294, Lymond nursed it delicately and then introduced the name of Antonius Beck. So he waited for Michelle to get all annoyed, and then as he was annoyed, introduced the name Antonius Beck so that he would be emotionally in the spot where Lymond wanted him to be, so that he would be angry enough that he could get help. Well, that's a bit weird because then Lymond says that he hasn't been able to trace Beck for 3 days, but just previously, Martine or La Belle Veuve says that because she got the pearls, that surely Lymond has found the warehouses of Mr. Beck. What? Anyway, so he's hunting this down. So, yeah, Lymond basically says, can you please find Beck and get the confession out of him? Michelle is like, God, I'm glad I'm not your brother. If they find out you're Teddy Boy and Davina's still in favour, then Lymond's like, then how happy we shall be to have a confession from Beck. Yeah, definitely Richard would not be in a good spot to have to explain all of that mess. So we go back to Lord Richard Coulter, and we find out that he comes and visits Lymond, and Lymond has considerable luggage, a page, his valet, his trumpet, what? His 3 men-at-arms, Lymond now has bodyguards, and his groom, as supplied by the Queen Dowager. Such a change. I want to see this Lymond with this, like, retinue. So cool. There's a line on page 297 from Richard's POV that says, recently Lymond had acquired a direct gaze which his brother found vaguely disquieting, which is unusual because I'm pretty sure that Richard should be used to Lymond's direct gazes now. What sort of gaze are we talking about? What has changed in his gaze since Game of Kings? Like, is it because Richard was used to Taddy Boy? And now Lymond actually being like on point, Richard's like, this person is scary. They called his son Kevin and Richard wanted to call his son Francis or Gavin. I'm assuming Gavin is their grandfather or their father. Anyway, before Richard leaves, they have an hour before or two before they go, so they start playing games together, including a game that is like strip poker or something. A dice game conducted on the forfeit system connected with clothing. Was Richard playing this too? I hope he was. Certainly a very cute end to chapter 1 of part 4, which is his brother's voice rang in Richard Crawford's ears long after the irrepressible party had gone. He walked indoors quietly and sat down, the silver rose tree in his palm, because Lymond had given a gift to Richard for his nephew. It's an interesting scene for Richard, really. Looking at this, I can't help but think that Richard is keen to go home, but he's also, I don't know what this moment is. Like, as Lymond left Richard and his voice disappeared into the night, Richard is just sitting there with this rose, silver rose in his palm, and I just wonder, what is he thinking? Is he thinking, is this the last time it might hear Lymond's voice, or is he sad that Lymond is not going to come back with him? What is he thinking at this point? I like to think that Richard feels bad that his brother, who is so incredibly full of talent, really isn't given a station that I think maybe Richard is actually thinking, this person, this crazy younger brother of mine, I wonder if it would have been better if I was born second and Francis was born first. Like, his voice rang in his ears long after the party had gone. I think also Richard deep down is really happy that Lymond is okay, that Lymond is Lymond again and not Taddy Boy, and that probably he's going to be okay and that he's healthy. Like, maybe he's just saying, this is so wonderful, my brother is okay. He's given me a gift for my son, which must be so special for Richard to have that family bond, because I think those little gestures are so important for Richard, and that Lymond was thoughtful enough to do that, because, you know, obviously Kevin isn't really going to care about getting a silver rose from his uncle, but the gesture for Richard means so much, and Lymond must have known how important that would have been for him. And because the birth of Kevin, both Richard and Lymond knew, meant that Lymond was no longer Master of Coulter and that he's now just Mr. Crawford. Mr. Crawford. And so he's turned around and said, it's fine, and here is a present for him. Because obviously Lymond is probably going to, love Kevin in his own way. And maybe Richard is relieved that that's Lymond's reaction, is to get a gift for him, that relieved that there's not going to be any animosity, that Lymond is on the Crawford side at the end of the day. Like, he's not going to... I mean, I don't think Richard ever thought Lymond would have kicked up a fuss about losing his title, but he's being very... for him to get that present is just a gesture of goodwill and say, hey, it's okay. And maybe Richard feels bad about that. It's very complex. I think I'm making this complex, but I like to look into it. Right, so we're now up to chapter 2. Everyone's on the move. We get... we have this amazing scene with the court, the Conde and Co., as we are calling them, the Conde brothers and all of their friends. They're obviously all healed and fine. Good doctors in France for back then. They are playing a game, the two bros, with also passing the time with a backgammon and a large healthy man with black hair. Initially I was like, oh, this is just Dengen's replacement for Lymond because he's got black hair, and as soon as Taddy Boy left, a replacement for Taddy Boy, sorry, as soon as Taddy Boy left, Dengen was like, where's my new plaything? But I don't think that's it, because I think it was Cormac O'Connor. But he does actually just pat his hand. So anyway, Cormac O'Connor is like in with with Conde and Co. and basically trying to make Lymond look bad. Who the hell is this Cormac O'Connor guy? How much does he know about Taddy Boy and Lymond and the plots? I don't know. But Lymond has overheard this because Lymond was next door with the constable and walks in. An elegant gentleman smiled at Dengen, and Dengen, to his own delight, blushed. So this is before Dengen even realizes that this is Taddy Boy again. He also just likes Lymond just like that. And Mr. Crawford had arrived. Lymond also talks to the constable and de Montmorency and about Daubigny and Daubigny's guilt, explains that Daubigny has basically like laughed off the charges which have been laid upon him, and the king is on Daubigny's side, and the constable does not recognise Lymond at all. That's much is clear. Anyway, so then Lymond can hear Conde and Co. playing next door because they're obviously a loud bunch. And anyway, so Lymond walks in and completely screws up Cormac O'Connor's name multiple times, which is just the most funniest Lymond way to piss someone off. And I was like, yes, this is so great. And then also proves that he had actually overheard their conversation, and including had overheard the insults against him, because he ends up saying that, who makes himself drunk in gentlemen's cellars? On pear juice, perhaps, is what Lymond says. And just previously, Cormac O'Connor had basically said about Lymond, he's a smooth-skinned bag of curds, turned silly on a cup of pear juice. But yeah, so Lymond basically subtly digs at Cormac O'Connor, and then Dengen is like so happy. There was a light in his face, a familiar light, in which the Prince of Conde noticed and understood. I'm assuming at that point both of the bros recognised Francis Crawford as Taddy Boy Bella, exclaims in French, a beautiful one, but not frigid at all. I'm assuming that they mean that he's so beautiful and he's definitely not frigid, and so they were basically cutting down the insult that Cormac O'Connor had made on Lymond, because they now know that this is Taddy Boy and that they know him very well, much better than Cormac O'Connor does. Anyway, I kind of want some more scenes between them, just because I'm pretty sure they recognise him as Taddy Boy, and because these guys are just in it to have fun, they're not really going to kick up a fuss about anything. And I don't think they actually would have believed that Taddy Boy was the one who caused all of the issues with the horses falling and dying and everyone getting injured. Like, I don't know if Conde and Co. would have thought that Taddy Boy actually did that. So everyone arrives now in France. We've got Margaret Erskine, we've got the Queens, Robert Stewart, George Douglas, O'Liamro, and all the English will be coming as well. And And Lymond finds out all of this from the Vidam and from the Bourbons and Condé and Co, essentially, because now that he's back in their fold, they're all just chatting about everything, because they just chat about everything, and Lymond gets all the goss he needs. The perfect source of information, the French court. And it says here that Lymond is riding round with his silken banner and his servants and his own blazing livery of red and blue and tasseled gold. So is Lymond riding around with the Coulter family crest of red and blue and gold? That's so cool. I want to see this. There's a line on page 303 where Lymond mutters to himself under his breath, which is kind of eerie. He says there, he addresses his absent friends bitterly. Don't show your satisfaction too much. Don't smile. Don't signal your congratulations. Or by God, ladies and gentlemen, you shall have Taddy Boy Bella back for life. Is Lymond basically just saying, please no one encourage me. I'm so close to falling back into Taddy Boy's habits of drinking and entertaining and making people laugh. Please do not encourage me. Do not laugh at my jokes. Do not entice me back into that life. Is that what he's saying bitterly? Why is he so bitter about it? Does he hate that he was like that? Does he hate that he's tempted by the lifestyle of the bard? It doesn't seem like a bad thing to be tempted by. And anyway, so they're talking about stuff is happening, and we find out that Robin Stewart is going to die in such a terrible way by being exposed on, like, whatever they exposed people on. Exposed to the elements. I assume in one of those things where, like, you have your head and your arms through, like the medieval times? Surely not. Maybe? I don't know. I forget what they're called. I mean, I don't think I ever knew what they were called. Stocks? The stocks. That's what they're called. So there's basically this ditch fight where it's man versus beast. When Lymond arrives at this place, George Douglas was not aware of Lymond arriving. I mean, George Douglas knows Lymond's alive, but maybe just wasn't expecting him to be right there, healthy and happy and blonde and Francis. That would have caught George unaware, because just I don't know what's going on with George. And then Margaret Erskine is watching this exchange, and also watching that Margaret is like, George catches Margaret's eyes and is angry at Margaret. Don't know why. Maybe Margaret was supposed to tell him. And then Margaret's also happy that the young Queen Mary hasn't seen Lymond because she might recognise him. And then also Lymond was looking like ice, and isn't catching eyes with Margaret Erskine. But Margaret keeps finding that her eyes wander down to Lymond, and she keeps catching herself, and she's like, damn it. And then there's a line here on 305. Even 2 years ago, he had not looked like that. So what Dunnett's saying here is that Lymond looks stunning. Like, he is eye-catching and brilliant in gold and red and blue, and his hair, and I mean, are we assuming he's still only 24 years old? He's this young boy. And even 2 years ago, he had not looked like that. So 2 years ago, when he'd returned to Scotland and was chilling in Scotland, he hadn't looked this brilliant, this stunning. So Lymond is now really leaning into the brilliance of what he could be. Or what he could look like. And he's really using how stunning he looks to get to people emotionally. Maybe that's like a trick he's using. He's like, I don't know, interesting. Why is Lymond choosing to dress up so much and be, like, why is he stroking his vanity a lot at the moment? Dabinia also sees Lymond and drew in a deep breath. And whatever from his brother's warning he had been expecting, it was clearly not this. So his brother Lennox has warned Dabinia that, hey, Francis Crawford is coming. Be prepared. He is himself. But it says here, whatever from his brother's warning he had been expecting, it was clearly not this. And this is that Lymond just, he makes a show of things. Like, he's not hiding in the shadows. He is like out in the open with his Scottish colours, and he's proud of his like family. And like, he's waving his flag. He's not hiding who he is, that's for sure. And that confidence must be quite alarming for Davinia. Anyway, the colour gradually returns to his face, and we get the fight now between Robin and this beast. And George Douglas comes up to Lymond during the fight, and George. This is on page 306. So he comes to Vivassal's glittering shoulder. What the hell is Lymond wearing? I'm just like picturing him in sequins right now. I know he's not wearing sequins, but goodness. There's just jewels all over his shoulders and his mantle. What? For a moment, George studied the downcast lashes and the imprint of well-bred deference held, without effort, on that harlequin face. What a brilliant line. So we've got here George just looking at, from Taddy Boy, who seemed like he didn't care about anything, to now this well-bred, aristocratic, aloof, distant Francis Crawford. It's so different. Held without effort on his face, like Lymond is effortlessly just being a completely snobby aristocrat right now and leading in to all of that. I'm clearly obsessed with this. Stop it, okay? I know. Robin is probably going to win against this wild boar, but sees Lymond actually, and actually renews his intensity to want to kill this boar, because I think Robin at this point knows he's going to die. Like, he does. But he also knows that he may as well, you know, kill the boar, get the last bit of, like, glory that he can in life. And then the Queen Dowager, for some crazy reason, I don't understand why this happened, but drops her scarf into the arena, asks Lymond to get it. Lymond clearly is not expecting that, because for an interminable moment, Lymond did not move. He's thinking, okay. But then he obeys and goes and gets this scarf. But in the process, Lymond is actually the one that ends up killing the boar, and which definitely pisses Robin off. Then Robin also tries to kill Lymond, because why not? Because Lymond reoffers the sword back to Robin and aims it at his face. Is unsuccessful because Lymond is now in peak condition here. Anyway, after the fight, they're back in front of the king. Davinia's not there, but Robin Stewart basically starts yelling and screaming and saying about the man calling himself Crawford of Lymond, there's something the court ought to know, the Prince of Barrow will be my witness, and then O'Leamro has none of it, and at the end of the day, I don't think O'Leamro really wants to see Lymond taken down like this, because also Lymond doesn't want to be involved in stuff as well, and it's drama that he doesn't want, but also at the end of the day, Lymond must know that Robin Stewart is way worse than Lymond, and even though Lymond wants to protect Una a lot, I don't think he has it in him to do that to Lymond. He just doesn't. Anyway, so Lymond shuts Robin down, and because the king had seen Robin try to kill Lymond in the arena, and then Robin was said, I only did that because I could have handled the beast myself, damn it. He came in and took that glory. And then the king's just like, oh, he's just pissed off at Lymond. There's no need to follow up on this, which worked really well in Lymond's favour, actually. Because the king's like, stole your audience, did he? And receives a fine reward. I see. Send him below. How good. So maybe the Queen Dowager dropped her scarf into the arena to give Lymond an opportunity to get on the good side of the king by making Robin look even worse, because he maybe knew that Robin would have tried to kill him. I don't know. So the affair of the Tour de Minas, so when everyone got injured in that, when all the horses fell down in that game, that's still attached to the name of Teddy Boy Bella. Lymond has to find proof against that. And it was very hard to disprove. But he's sitting there with all this knowledge of like, how am I going to do this whilst he's in French court? If this disquieted him, nothing of it showed to his companions that afternoon. He received visitors and abstractedly exercised his charm. So Lymond is just like playing the games, being really stoic here, but also like super charming. At the same time, he's probably just like, how am I going to clear my name? This is all about to come to light. There's an admission here that that Lymond also was stuck because Lymond is so successfully marked as the Queen's property at the moment that he can't really go and do much. He can't sneak around. So he has to wait until night to change into ordinary clothes and then go see Abernathy and Oleumro, which is exactly what he does. And Abernathy, or Archie, is with Oleumro at the time that evening. There's a great line here. Abernathy's like, do you really think he'll try to kill the young queen again? He'd have to be mad. And Lymond's answer hilariously was, the smart answer to that is that we're all mad. But in fact, men who wreck whole ships and stampede elephants and destroy cavalcades of riders out of hand are probably less balanced than the rest. No truer words have been spoken by you, Lymond. Lord Dubinia is a slightly stupid man of exquisite culture who has been living for years off the fat of his ancestors' reputations. And then Lymond basically explains the psychology of Dubinia as to why Dubinia definitely wouldn't, was annoyed at France, for example. Essentially, Dubinia expected, once he'd been released from jail, to be much more close with the king and have more power and more money. And we did actually get, many chapters back, a scene where he was complaining about not getting the funds from the king that he thought he would get. And because he didn't get that, he's now going to put in with the English, because he wasn't going to be the great man of France. He goes about seeking a different throne to support. And because his brother, Lennox, has this young son and is married to Margaret, they have a good claim for multiple thrones. And if he can try to get his brother's son on a throne somewhere, then that would mean that then Dubinia is back on the in crowd, obviously with a different country. It would be with England, but then he would be in a better social standing position, which is all he wants in life, and this is why he's so similar to Robin Stewart. They are both their own enemy. They are snakes that are poisoning themselves. And then Lymond also suggests that he probably thinks that the Earl of Lennox was probably the one that suggested this to Dubinia in the first place, to his brother in the first place. The fact that Lymond has explained the entire lore background of Dubinia so succinctly as to what his motivations are and why he's come to the conclusion that he has to kill Mary, Queen of Scots, well, Mary, the Queen, the young Queen, makes me think, Lymond, why didn't you figure this out before? You knew all of this. Like, why weren't you putting the pieces together before? Anyway, so they're all chatting and Lymond's all, explaining all this stuff, and then he just gets nasty at Oleumro again and pokes more fun at Oleumro not being able to, like kind of says, why do you like Una so much? Like, are you afraid that once you have her, you cannot hold her, so you prefer to resign? Like, he's making fun of Oleumro for being like a coward and running away, and he's saying that it's only because he's worried that he wouldn't be able to hold on to Una in the first place. And, oh my God, this is just another episode of Lymond just, his mouth being his own worst enemy. Like, stop it, Lymond. You could be nice to Oleumro and this could really work in your favour. Is he trying to distance Oleumro further? Anyway, they basically talk about Una being left with Cormac O'Connor. We find out that Una belonged to, or at least worked for, O'Connor's father before him, and sounds like she's kind of got a little bit of sort of Stockholm syndrome, and that he's abusive. And there's a suggestion here that there's like definitely domestic violence. And then at one point, Lymond says, you left her with him? And Oleumro's like, well, whatever he thinks fit, she will accept. And then Lymond bites back, well, you're accepting that too. What sort of man are you if you accept what she's going through? Like, you know, the standard that we walk past is the standard that we accept. Lymond says a normal man would be there making knife handles out of his bones. And basically, yeah, just says to Lemur that you're a coward for not trying to help her more. Not that Lymond's helping her, but anyway. Then Lemur leaves, and Lymond, Archie says, sure, I think Olimar is definitely in love with with Una, but you're smitten a wee bit yourself, aren't you? And Lymond's like, maybe, but it was not the voice of a man in love. There's something I don't understand at the bottom of 315, where they're talking about giving up Una so that they can get the information out of Una regarding Dabinia. And Lymond says, but if we give her up, as with Faustina, we give up her dowry, the Empire. I don't understand what that means. Does that mean that we give up Ireland as well? And Lymond's trying to choose pathways here as to what's the best? Is saving the life of a young little girl queen worth what could happen to Ireland if he does the wrong thing here? Anyway, so Lymond basically has come to a decision. I assume that because he says to Archie before he leaves, I shall probably do no favour for Una O'Dwyer tonight. Thus I distribute my favours impartially. And then he leaves, and then we find out that Robin Stewart has escaped. And I'm assuming that Lymond has set him out. I'm assuming. Because what we happen here is that we know that now that Stewart is out and escaped, that Dabinia can make a move to try to kill Queen Mary, because now it can just be blamed on Robin Stewart. You can definitely say that if Robin Stewart's escaped, he's probably just getting away from everyone as fast as he can. He's not coming back to kill the Queen. And Dabinia would know that, and he would make a move on the Queen, and then that could be accused. And then could accuse Robin Stewart, because Robin Stewart is on the loose. And Lymond is going to try to use this to catch Dabinia, I assume. He's trying to get more evidence. Because this is really interesting, because Lymond doesn't want to give up Una, and he doesn't want to have to also force Martine as well, I think, to give stuff up. So he's actually trying hard to find the best way possible forward that is going to not affect other people as well. So yeah, he's juggling lots of balls here, and he has made the decision, as he has always done, to risk himself again, because he's going to have to risk himself, I assume, to now try to get further proof. And I'm excited to read on. I will see you in the next video. I am super happy with part 4. It is definitely exciting and ramping up. I'm already excited to reread the series, because I just know stuff that I've missed, and I'm like, oh, I should reread all this. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to keep reading forward and assume that I've missed stuff, because that means my reread value will be even better. So I know I'm missing stuff. I will see you next time.